Greetings from Finland, where I'm based in. It's nice to be in London. Again, I do come here all the time. Yeah, and today's talk I'm going to highlight, like many of the speakers before, the importance of lifestyle. Lifestyle in itself and lifestyle choices that people make to help their resilience and their physical and mental well-being. But then I'll bring in the power of data. That's what he was referring to, the power of heartbeat data to help employees achieve their goals and their wellness in wellness programs. And also data can help the company, the employer, understand the concerns of the workforce and in that way help support those kind of healthy lifestyle choices. See? So a similar graphic than this in a presentation before lunch. It had slightly different percentages, but the basic idea with well-being being obviously that the role of lifestyle is huge in that. In this statistic that we have gotten from a few years ago from a Health Affairs article in the US, gives lifestyle about 40% of the sort of the overall wellness pie. There are other important factors, but lifestyle is what you and I, we can, as individuals, we can influence with our own actions. Of course, it's mainly about individual responsibility and attitudes, but I'll try to bring in the idea that understanding the crucial role of lifestyle, how important that also is for the company, for the employer, so that they can help employees and support them in making those kinds of better choices. And I've chosen three sort of very important, I don't know if there are three most important ones, but three very important lifestyle factors, what I will call key human performance indicators, KHPIs, and I'll highlight them and what their role to overall well-being is. I'll start with sleep. Simple enough. All we need to do is sleep. That should be easy for all of us, but it isn't. The fact is that people simply don't sleep enough today. If we don't sleep, we will die sooner or later. And like this slide shows, there are all kinds of bodily functions that are closely connected to sleep. If we don't get enough sleep, these types of issues are not happening as they should. So let's take a quick poll, just a show of hands, absolute honesty expected. How many hours did you sleep last night? Anybody less than 5 hours? Few hands, no judgment. 5 to 6 hours? A few more. 6 to 7? Pretty good. 7 to 8? I tried. I don't think I slept the whole time, but I tried. Anybody over 8 hours? No one. Good. So the reason I brought that up is because we do need to, from time to time, we should think about that, how long we sleep. This is some statistics from the American Academy of Sleep Medicine and Sleep Research from a couple of years ago that shows that sleeping less than 7 hours per night on a regular basis is associated with a whole range of physical and mental illnesses and conditions. Of course, we all have those short sleeps occasionally, but chronically, if we sleep too little, there is strong connections to all kinds of problems. And if there is one thing that we can do for ourselves and also for our staff is to highlight the importance of sleep. That came out really strongly in Dr. Batman's lecture earlier before lunch as well. He was lifting sleep out as one of the key concerns as well because society overall just doesn't sleep enough these days. Number 2, stress. Sounds a little bit scarier and harder than sleep, but stress, or actually I should say stress management. If you think of a performance indicator, we need to learn to manage our stress. We know that excessive chronic stress, the kind of stress that stays on and goes on day after day, week after week, it's a major risk factor for lifestyle diseases and burnout. Stress in itself, it causes physiological changes in the body, for example, elevated blood pressure or elevated levels of the stress hormones constantly, and those physiological symptoms are directly correlated to a range of different lifestyle diseases, such as diabetes 2, cardiovascular diseases, metabolic syndrome. But the other pathway, I think the lower pathway, is probably even the more typical one that happens. So when we have chronic stress, too much to do, we are under excess load, we tend to make those less healthy lifestyle choices more easily. We are stressed, so we don't have time to eat right. We just grab something on the go. or we don't have time to exercise because the stress is wearing us down. More likely to smoke, more likely to dip into those excessive alcohol units instead of the responsible drinking that the previous speaker was talking about. And all of these unhealthy lifestyle choices are, again, very strongly shown to be correlated with increased risk of lifestyle diseases, mental and physical. I added the WHO bit there just last week, because it was last week or the week before, it was a big press release that came out that the World Health Organization just declared burnout for the first time. It gave it a medical diagnosis code, so sort of officially acknowledging that as a huge problem in society, something that we really need to tackle. And burnout, obviously, it's not only mental or only physical, but it's definitely a health problem, probably associated with both. And then fitness is my third key human performance indicator, get fit or be active. And this graphic here, we've drawn this from our Firstbeat database. I'll show in just a little bit, I'll show some examples of what we do with data, but this is based on several 100,000 measurements of heart rate and heart rate variability in people's normal daily life, sort of 24/7 measurements as people go about their lives. And when we compare the fitness level of the people who undergo these measurements and then look at how much recovery they are getting, we are seeing a really clear trend. As you can see, when the fitness level gets higher, the number of recovery minutes during sleep, meaning the good quality physiological sleep during night, is higher when you are fitter. And the same trend can be seen if you look at 24-hour data. So we're looking at recovery during the day plus during the night. So the more fit people, they are able to switch off their stress more quickly and then start recovering when it's time for that. And bonus is that when we asked about their energy levels, how energetic they are feeling, the people in better fitness are also feeling more energetic during the daytime. And this is talking about just normal people taking care of their fitness. There is the top level category, but most people fit into the good fitness, people like you and I who are just taking care of our own fitness. Just a little bit of definitions before I show the data so that it kind of starts to make sense. So when I talk about stress, it's a completely natural reaction. We cannot eliminate that. We all have that from time to time. It actually increases our energy and activation level, and it helps us get the job done. We need that to get through the different demands of the day. It actually improves mental and physical performance. But if it's excessive and chronic and it stays on, like I mentioned before, then it starts to be associated with many negative health outcomes. Then recovery, when I mention that, what it means simply is calming down of the body. It's a physiological process that happens when the stress stimulus is over and the body's physical and psychological state returns back to the pre-stress level, sort of a normal baseline level. And obviously, both of these are needed if we are going to stay healthy. And that's where the term resilience comes in. It basically means an ability to cope and adjust to different demands in life. I often think of it as kind of like a rubber band, that if our baseline state in life is fully stretched, so we just barely get through the days. By the time it's bedtime, we crash into bed, sleep, and then go through the next day again, and we're completely stretched all the time. That means that we don't have any resilience. So if something additional comes, like an extra bit of stress or something unexpected, then we get thrown off balance and we get sick, or we kind of lose it or start having some problems. And good resilience, obviously, the key to that is finding that individual, tricky, fickle balance between stress and recovery. And now I'll get into a little bit of data to show how we can start getting a better idea of how that is for each person. So just a tiny little bit of physiology to make sure that this makes sense. Heart rate variability might not be familiar to all of you. So what it means is when we measure every beat of the heart and we measure the time between heartbeats and see how much that varies from one beat to the next. That's heart rate variability. And it looks into the autonomic nervous system of the body. It has a sympathetic branch, which is the stress system. It helps us perform and get through the days. And then the parasympathetic branch is the recovery part of the nervous system. Both of them are needed. They're both normal, and the balance between them is what helps us cope with life. And we use heart rate variability kind of as a window to look under the skin to see what's happening in there. And that's where the Firstbeat lifestyle assessment that I'll just sort of refer to it enough so that you can understand what the examples are based on. It's a 3-day, 24/7 heart rate variability measurement that a person wears in part of their normal daily life, all day, all night, at work, at leisure time. And it looks at stress management, the balance between stress and recovery, sleep, and then exercise, and gives them different kind of indexes and scores and results about that. It's a coaching tool, so you don't do that by yourself. You do it with a wellness coach or a professional who then helps you understand what it all means and what you can learn from your individual result. The idea, these are two 24-hour graphs from a lifestyle assessment. So each of the graphs is a 24-hour reading from somebody. The red color means stress. Like I mentioned, that's completely normal. We don't need to eliminate that. A person doesn't get a bad grade from the assessment if they have quite a bit of red in their days. But we would like to also see in the green color, which means recovery, like I mentioned before, sort of the opposite, when the body slows down and begins to get those valuable recovery minutes. The top example is a good example of a good result where things are balanced. A busy day for the person, mostly on active state during the daytime, but then the person did some good choices after work, went for a walk in the forest that probably helped them physically and mentally to kind of de-stress from the events of the day. They had to do some tasks in the evening, but they also did a bit of meditation, reading before bed. You can see the graph is beginning to turn from red to green in the evening, and they were able to log a beautiful, good, high quality sleep that night. Whereas the bottom example is more about what typically happens to people when they get too stressed and too busy. The day looks about the same, but then the red activation level just kind of keeps going all evening too. They are doing some computer games, some work emails, house chores, and the energy and activation just stays very high, and then it keeps going for several hours even when the person goes to sleep. These are the types of learnings that the lifestyle assessment helps people see from their own real life, so they can then start setting some goals and learning from that. All right, and then I have an example from these were sort of theoretical, they're real examples, but I have a case study of a person who did the assessment within a couple of months as part of a larger corporate project. So marketing manager in a big company, this was her first measurement. All 3 of her days looked about like this. Essentially no physical activity, no blue color there hardly to be seen, and her physical activity points were very low. The restorative effect of sleep quite low on all days. You can see bits and pieces of green during her sleep period, but mostly on the stress state, even while she was sleeping. And the balance is obviously not very good because pretty much it just kept going all day. And her own subjective experience very much supported that. She felt like she was constantly switched on. Her life was an endless list of to-dos and things to do, and she kept going until the moment she crashed into bed, and she wasn't surprised to find that, but it was a real wake-up call for her that I gotta do something about this, and then she sat down with her coach, and they set 2 main goals for her. The first goal for her was to find a way to integrate some exercise, some physical activity into her busy days, because she realized that low fitness wasn't gonna help her going forward at all, and she had used to do that, but it had just kind of slipped behind all the other things to do. And the second goal was to consciously learn to integrate some recovery moments into her days, take some action steps and plans for that. And this is an example from her second assessment, which was done, I don't remember, I think 3 or 4 months later, a follow-up measurement, and she had integrated those goals very nicely in here. Her choice of physical activity in her life situations was she was in a position where she could take her bike to work several days a week. It took about 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes coming back. So fortunate, of course, that doesn't work for everyone, but she was able to do that. And with that, she was able to get good physical health effects from all of the days when she did that bike. And it only took that about 40 minutes out of her day, which she would have spent about half of that in a car anyway, or in a train anyway. So very good time-efficient way to integrate exercise into a busy lifestyle. And then you can see a few of the things that she did during the daytime. There is relaxation during the workday. That was one of the things that she absolutely integrated. She decided that she's going to have 5 to 10 minutes, well, in this case, it looks like 15 minutes of some kind of a recovery activity, even amidst the busiest work days. maybe a mindfulness moment, sometimes closing the office door and doing a little bit of deep breathing. Sometimes she might step outside the office and walk around the park just to get her mind off of the stressful effects of the day. And also a bit of relaxation in the evening. She sort of made the 1 hour before bedtime like a holy hour when she wouldn't do busy work unless it was absolutely necessary. Just trying to wind down, switch off, music, reading, calm activities. And her sleep looks a lot better. Not perfect still, not all 3 days were quite as good as this one, but a very significant move in the right direction for her. And then I have an example of what at group level we can produce from this kind of data. So when a group of employees does this kind of an assessment at work, we can have some aggregate results for the company. The previous results are always just for the individual themselves. They are personal result that only the wellness coach and the employee will see that. So it cannot be in any way used against the employee, but it's their personal learning experience. But then we provide anonymous group summaries. This is an example from a large UK bank that invested in a staff well-being by having a leadership program with workshops, heart rate variability assessment, and different kind of coaching sessions. And the CEO really wanted to have a more resilient workforce in a tough time, tough period, financially, some changes coming ahead. And she wanted to have a company culture that supports well-being. The stress results can be seen here, and the sleep results similar. This was the area that this company really lifted as the key takeaway at group level. They started to emphasize to their employees how important it is to sleep enough at personal level, but also at group level. So in summary, I'll leave with this as a takeaway that you can take that as a personal takeaway or thinking of your companies. This is what I call supercompensation of life. This graph is also from one of our reports. The idea is to illustrate the balance between stress and recovery. And what I mean with supercompensation is life is that if we want to improve our performance, we need to find the balance between stress and recovery. And that's where the term called load of life comes into place. What it means is all the things that are the realities that we are faced with. It's not just job stress that affects us. It's job, kids, spouse, health, commute. Here in London, especially whenever I come here, I find that commute must be one of the biggest stressors for many people because it's so busy and takes so long and it's crowded. But it's a fact of life that we can't eliminate, but we can work around and figure out what is our load of life and then determine how much recovery do we need to have so that we can charge that battery after a stressful day. And the sort of a fact, kind of a grim fact, but a real fact is that when the stress gets bigger, also our need for recovery gets bigger. So if you want to keep this graph in balance, like the upper graph is a good example, instead of having the line that just keeps going down, you need to get more recovery at your most stressful times. And that's usually when we do just the opposite. We skimp on sleep when we get really busy. So I'll leave with that bit of reflection for each of us to try to think, maybe wonder where you are at in that line right now, and then what are the kinds of lifestyle things you could do to make those kind of healthy changes. So thank you, and you can meet us and our team here later on if we don't have time for questions right now. Thank you.